So I presented this statement in two different views. I've only got a slide for the public on the departmental expenditures, but I also provided in the package an object view.
Or the object.
The object view, which
I said to Raj, the general public, myself included, will not understand necessarily
the terminology there. That's
object.
why I kind of laughed when I said
Yeah.
that. So I'll try to figure out some friendlier terminology around that. But essentially, we're putting about 18% of what we collect in taxes towards our capital asset reserves. And I've heard that if a municipality is putting about 20% of what they collect towards asset renewal, that is kind of a good place to be at. I'll have to read up on that and just double check. That being said, I mean, this year we will get on with the asset management exercise, because that is what we need to do, is basically get an inventory of our assets, and in order to be able to determine what our costs of maintaining those assets in the long term is going to be, and then what an adequate funding level is to sustain that in the long term. But that was a gist of operating. So I really looked at the budget from two different lenses. I looked at it from the operating lens and then from the capital side of the business. And so what we're doing on the capital side, that 1.3 million will go into reserves, and then we take what we did in terms of processes. I had the staff submit their capital requests, and the capital program here, again, I summarized it in terms of categories that made sense to me and were consistent with how other municipalities look at their capital. So basically, facilities program, a transportation infrastructure program, heavy duty equipment and vehicles, I lump them together, and then smaller equipment in info technology. And so our total spending needs for the year, including utilities and water, are $7.7 million. Not all of that is funded through asset reserves. I mean, a large portion of the utilities, water, sewer is a water treatment plant, which you're seeing a smaller number because the water treatment plant I spread over the 3 years.
Oh, okay.
As it's a $6 million project, but some of the spending will be in outer years. I should have probably done that with the facilities, and I will in the 5-year financial plan. But for example, for the fire hall, as I go through the other slides, you'll see I put the a provision in for 2.4. Allison pointed out to me it's probably going to cost closer to $3 million, so I'm going to revise that number there, and that's what we've been approved for borrowing, is $3 million. So that needs to be revised, but it doesn't impact the percentages. It would impact which year the capital shows up in the total.
So we got 3 million for the structure, and if you've got, what, 9,000 square feet, $125 a buildable foot for the land, so that's at least $1.1 million, so this is at least a $4.1 million project.
Including the land.
Including the land. That's probably a little on the light side.
And I always hope, from my hotel experience, that they've fully calculated the FF and the fit out. Because there's nothing worse than building this sucker and finding that there isn't a single desk, telephone, or anything.
And also, if we're really gonna have 40 parking spots, that's 40 chunks of asphalt too, among other things.
Hopefully that's, and I know how much time they've spent, but seriously, not that a lot of folks spent just hours poring over this, and people who do understand construction, so I rather hope that this is a brutal.
But I just can't wrap a head around 40 parking stalls.
I can't either. I bet it's for emergency. I bet it's part of the emergency preparedness. That's the only thing I can think of. And it better not be asphalted, because
I don't
environmentally that would be horrible.
think so. I think it's going to be a
Yeah,
park.
all right.
I think it's going to be a car park very similar to the one you see
Yeah,
next door
next
to the
door.
fire station.
In which case, then there's free parking or whatever, we could charge for parking.
So the other thing I was just going to point out here is there's an itemized listing in the financial plan booklet of all of these items, but I've just kind of lumped them together. So there's a lot of $5,000, $6,000 items like roof replacements of buildings and stairways and whatnot. So I've basically are ongoing
All right, I'm gonna keep back up one slide, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I'm just
please.
gonna take you back. The sewer and water, is that all the sewer plant, meaning that's all island-wide tax dollars? Or is any of it relating to the small water distribution outfits? Does the whole money have to be
Yeah.
raised off the general tax base?
No, that's funded through those reserves or through the rates. So the utilities program for water and sewer would not come from the general fund.
Should that be
not
shown
from
as
electric.
two separate numbers then?
I should actually probably break it out into two separate
Yeah,
numbers.
because some is gonna be collected through the water rates, that all the little water things go,
Mhm.
as opposed to, I don't know the ratio,
So
as opposed to others in the general revenue pot.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
so I will, for my tracking purposes, it is all separate, and
Yeah,
I
I
accumulated
understand.
it for presentation, I just brought it all together.
Okay, thank you.
So, going over to the transportation, just the big cost here, the roads and infrastructure resurfacing. We spend about $425,000 a year on average. Culvert replacement on Miller Road, that is a project that the superintendent of roads and utilities says is absolutely, in his opinion, required this year. The culverts are not in good shape across Miller Road, and if they were to give out, it would basically cut off access for people on that side of the culvert to the rest of the community, so he's planning on doing that this year.
Raj, I keep taking you back. Can you get back one more again? I apologize. If I've got this right, the amount of money that we told the taxpayers the fire hall would cost was gonna be $68 per year per household.
Based on borrowing $3 million.
I don't know,
Yeah.
that's gonna be my question, because I
Okay.
think I worked it out, it's gonna be based on 2.25% interest too. So now we have interest rates, the last 30-year number that I saw from MFA was 331.
Yeah,
So that's going up by basically 50%. And if the construction costs are going up by a third, somebody may just want to have a new calculation ready, because the $68 per household is probably something like double that now, I'm gonna guess.
yeah, I'll have to do that, yeah.
In case somebody asks you here.
Yeah, obviously I've got a vested
Yeah.
interest in knowing this.
Yeah.
We were talking about this whole subject prior to the vote. If it is going to be significantly different, Raj, at some time soon, I think I'd like to be able to, know about that.
I think the
I think it's gonna
difference
be,
is going to be.
double without even the land. I bet you that number's gonna double without even the land. Sorry, I cut you off, right?
My thinking is that it's going to be impacted by the interest rate. I mean, the land is not going to factor the land into the cost of the fire hall or what people are.
Yeah,
paying
I think
for.
the way it's presented to the voters, you're absolutely right. But if you take the view that that land is marketable
Okay,
and what you could sell it for,
yeah,
then effectively, from a macro financing point of view, you gotta add the two. I was really just
yeah,
concentrating on what we told the public.
yeah,
And the rates already, we know, are up at least 100 basis points. And by the time you pull the trigger on the financing, they're probably gonna be even higher
yeah.
by some undefined amount.
So those calculations, I'll work those out and
Okay.
have them. So, and then over in the heavy-duty equipment vehicles where I was going to, we've got the inclusion of the five-ton plow salt truck for $250. That's the big item. There was also a fire truck replacement that was in here for $500,000. I made council aware of that, and the reason the fire chief had put that forward was because the insurance rating may be impacted for the community if it gets, because they look at age. He felt that the truck is in adequate shape for our needs. However, the factors that the insurance underwriters take into consideration in setting insurance rates could impact that. So I deferred it into 2018 in terms of our capital plan. But I'm gonna make council aware that that risk is there and that, he had put that forward in as a request for 2000, sorry, I deferred it to 2019. I think I said 18 earlier, but it was a 2018 request. And then, again, in terms of our smaller equipment, we've got renewal and replacement of recreation equipment. There's a bike park, which is externally funded, and then some marine response equipment and regular annual renewal and replacement. Library equipment down for 26. And we have IT replacement and renewal, which primarily consists of, I think there's provision for turnaround of 3 computers, and then this coming year we'll be having a new council, so iPads for new council, and then there's a request for a few iPads for GIS staff iPads as well. And again, on the basically what's included in the water, in that $3.5 million number I had on the first slide for sewer and utilities was $3 million in this year, $3 of the $6 million for the water treatment plant, and other water utility projects at $285,500 for capital works, and the sewer utility project's $166,000. And that, in a nutshell, is the capital program, and highlights of the 2018
Is your questions are covered?
financial plan. You guys have questions?
Not all of them.
What else you wanna,
I was looking at, not in the presentation that you've done, but in the 2018 financial plan, financial plan, that the increases in salaries in some ways don't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I understand some of them, and so I'm only, and I just, the library one has now been answered. It didn't make any sense to me. And no, it's not, the FTEs aren't listed on your FTE list.
Okay.
So there should be it
Yeah.
would show there. And I'm thinking that maybe some of the others have been answered. It seems to me that though that didn't show that there was an increase in FTEs for fire, it would appear that there's going to be some increase in staff there in order to do the fire emergency, whatever it was.
The fire training, yes,
Yeah.
that was
But-
number of hours
Yeah.
required for the training would go up.
Would go up.
Yeah.
The roads and infrastructure, the salaries are up by 16% as opposed to the 2.1%. So that raised, that said to me, why there isn't any increase in FTEs. And you've now said that we're looking at money for a student, but that wouldn't take it up by 16 or 14%. So if we subtract the 2.1%, so and even the solid waste management is up by 4.6% as opposed to 2.1%. So it just doesn't look quite right to me, doing those looks.
So in the utilities, there was an addition last year they did some restructuring. And so there was I believe a position that was added in the solid waste area and utilities area. They basically a billing clerk, so they moved some of the billing functionality out of finance for utilities up there. So I'd have to take a look at what the mix was between utilities. So I haven't addressed, I think that's the only thing that I could tell that where staff costs went up between, they had a maternity replacement, and then after the maternity replacement, they ended up having a position, an additional position up there during the year to handle the utilities billing. In terms of the translation between so solid waste is an external, the allocation of solid waste, I'd have to take another look at. I don't have an answer for that right now.
I mean, it's not a lot of money, but staff costs are one of our major expenditures, so I like to pay attention to it.
Okay.
So I'm just going to table that, because, I don't necessarily need answers. I'm just tabling, that's an observation on my part.
Okay.
Okay.
My understand,
Sorry, go after you.
my understanding, there is a review underway of the salaries for the muni as compared to other munis and like positions. Do you anticipate there's gonna be change because of that review? And is that been taken into account in budgeting in 2008?
It's difficult for me to comment on that, because, I mean, from what few positions I've seen, and some seem comparable to others, others are not, so, I mean, speaking, with my coming on board, the municipality incurred a significant cost in comparison to what you were paying your previous financial.
But you're
manager.
worth it, right?
Pardon?
You're worth it.
I certainly hope so. But, and so there were probably a couple of positions that were addressed in the compensation adjustment issue, and that's what I hit on in the presentation. In terms of talking about which positions, I probably don't think
That's not
that
appropriate.
it would be appropriate for me to comment on these specific positions that were,
No. I just thought,
yeah.
I thought it was the whole muni, all the staff, all the,
But the review will be across the muni to
That's what I
ensure
thought.
that we are
yes.
consistent with other
Yeah, because we're
practices, yeah.
non-union, I presume we want to stay that way. I don't
And-
know.
Well,
Yeah, and it depends on what factors are taken into consideration, because we've got comparator municipalities, right? But if you were to take us and compare us to somebody like Gibson's or somebody like Roslyn, I don't think that would necessarily be a straight comparison, given the proximity of this community to the Lower Mainland.
Mhm.
Because the labor pool for the municipality of qualified people are gonna come
Yeah.
from close to where the community exists, right? And the costs of living in this community are a lot higher than the costs of living in Oliver or some other place. I mean, Gibson's is probably slowly catching up, but that's just my observation. So it depends on what parameters are used
But
to, in the
is
review.
an outside services doing that? Is that-
It would have to be an outside service in order for it to be independent and for it to be unbiased, yes. There's a provision in the budget. It was supposed to happen this year, but due to work plans, it didn't, so it
Oh,
will
okay.
happen in the upcoming year.
Okay, good. Thank you, Raj.
You're welcome.
Okay, why don't we go on to 5.1C, 5-year financial?
So before we go on to that, what I was going to ask was, if there's no more questions on the 2018 budget,
Yep.
I mean, ideally, from my perspective, I think we need a motion from the committee, and I was kind of just thinking about that just before the meeting. From my perspective, in a positive way, the motion would be that the Finance Advisory Committee recommends to council, because then my next step is going to be to prepare the 5-year financial plan to council. So the Finance Advisory Committee recommends to council that the 2018 5-year financial plan bylaw reflecting a 6.6% increase, rather 6.2, I should say, percent property tax increase in the operating and a 1.5 property tax increase in the renewal and replacement be approved, or whatever this committee feels is
Knowing
appropriate.
this group, and they can kneecap me since they're all free spirits, why don't we have that taken into consideration, the comments that were made by committee members to the senior finance person or something like that.
Okay,
And then if they ask you, you can, at least it doesn't sound like we're giving a blanket support. My colleagues can kneecap me on that, but I think there are some concerns, but I don't think we're gonna say no,
Mhm.
but we did raise questions.
okay,
And so if we put a subject to the
Yeah.
questions that were presented to yourself,
okay.
and then if I was a counselor, I'd say, well, what the hell did they say? You've got some answers.
Okay,
Does
no,
that,
that's.
does that make sense, folks? Just
Yeah.
kneecap me up.
Yeah.
Sir.
Because this is the first time we've really had a chance to put this out onto open discussion. And it does allow us a little bit, if anyone comes up with anything tabled,
Yeah.
then that takes it into account. It also makes it look a bit more of a thoughtful process.
Yeah, so put some weasel words in there. It's,
Okay, so,
Delete weasel, try
yeah,
scum.
leave weasel out, Lisa, because you're not gonna do that.
so So how are we gonna word this? The
I put the
Financial Advisory
subject
Committee
earlier.
recommends to council that the 2018 five-year financial plan,
Subject to the questions of clarification presented to, what's your title, right, director or something?
Chief Financial Officer.
Chief Financial Officer.
sorry, so subject to the comments, did you
The
say?
Clarification is a better choice of words.
Subject to the clarifications,
Of questions asked,
Let's say clarification, that's a better choice of words.
clarifications.
okay, subject to the clarifications of the committee?
No, of the chief financial
Yeah,
officer.
clarifications presented to the Chief Financial Officer.
Well, he's presenting the
He
fact.
requested, of,
clarified.
yeah.
Okay, sorry, subject to the clarifications of the
Who's
CFO.
clarifying?
He clarified, we asked the questions, he clarified.
Oh, okay.
So we,
So it should be
Which was that?
subject to the questions.
yeah, by,
Okay, questions, sorry.
Subject to the,
The chair will defer to brighter minds here.
subject to the committee's questions
Of the chief financial officer
of the CFO.
Being clarified.
and
his clarification.
his.
This is becoming a really long sentence.
That's all right.
The Financial Advisory Committee recommends to council that the 2018 five-year financial plan, subject to the,
I think we should subject to clarifications by the Chief Financial Officer.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
that- I
that's
think
good.
so, yeah, okay, because it would be implied that the clarifications are to the committee, right? Subject to the clarifications of the CFO,
By the CFO. right?
by the CFO. I know my mind's going blank. So, subject to the clarifications by the CFO. Now, are you going to still want to put in the 6.2 property tax increase?
Yeah.
Can you tell me where we
Six
left
point
off?
two percent property tax increase and 1.5% capital asset.
And
renewal.
1.5% capital asset renewal. Okay, so where the Financial Advisory Committee recommends to council that the 2018 five-year financial plan, subject to clarifications by the CFO, reflecting 6.2 property tax increase and 1.5% capital asset renewal
Increase.
increase.
Be approved.
Be approved.
They approved.
To approve.
Okay, one more
Right, is
time.
that wording like that okay to you?
Yeah.
Do you want me to read it back fully one more time, just to be?
That's
That's
Crystal
scary,
clear?
but go ahead,
The
Lisa.
Finance Advisory Committee recommends to council that the 2018 five-year financial plan, subject to clarifications by the CFO reflecting 6.2% property tax increase and 1.5% capital asset renewal increase be approved.
Okay, that's not quite right.
Okay?
It's, the subject to the clarifications is in the wrong part of that sentence.
Okay, should be at the end, are you thinking?
Yeah,
Okay, so how does this sound? The Financial Advisory Committee recommends to council that the 2018 five-year financial plan reflecting 6.2% property tax increase and 1.5% capital asset renewal increase, comma, subject to the clarifications by the CFO,
be approved. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Makes
Subject to
sense.
clarifications, yeah.
Everybody kind of happy with that,
Yeah.
Sharon?
Otherwise, you're gonna have to put a full stop and break the
Is the
sentence into
CFO
two.
happy with it?
Okay, so now I'm gonna have to rely on your notes for all of those clarifications, because I didn't get notes for all the questions. But I do have the gist of some of the ones that you
Yeah, and I
asked.
think if
so-
you get asked for that,
Yeah.
what I'd suggest you do, you go in with about 6 of them, and they say, what did they clarify? These are the things they asked for clarification
Yeah.
on. So at least you're,
They'll be
prepared.
in the notes, so.
Blah, blah, blah.
Talking about clarifications, one of the big bones I had last year with your predecessor was, as you know, everything was directed to departments, and we had all these various silos. And it was almost, and figures were quite reasonably moved from one department to another during the year. Fine. So you had the results for each of these silos at the end of the year, good, bad or indifferent, but mind you, the figures have been swapped around. But to try and get the consolidated figures, for example, how many more hours you spent, what is the EFT, what is the actual salary increases, was down there impossible. And I think Raj has overcome that, because we simply cannot manage without.
Keith, were you prepared to move that
I
wonderful
move that.
motion? Joyce,
I second.
all those in favor? Ayes. I have a slight personal problem because I have an important dinner date tonight, namely with my daughter, so I'd like to be out of here by about 10 to 5 at the risk of circumventing too many rules here or something, brother. One should never stand up their daughter. So I think we've done the B part. Do you want to look at the 5-year financial plan, Rash? Is that where we gotta go, or where do you want to go here?
I think essentially that motion covered the 5-year
Yeah.
financial plan, so
Oh,
I think
okay.
we're done with C.
Okay.
And E?
And with E, I will just give you guys a quick handout. So that's public consultation. I'll just give you a quick
Okay.
overview.
How come there's no D? Where did I miss?
Oh, yeah, that should be D, I guess, it's where it says E.
Okay, fair enough.
So, the 2018 open house, we had 2 budget open houses. One was last
How many
Tuesday
people
on
showed
the
up?
13th.
How many people
We had 2 people here on the 13th. One of the 2 happened to be Councillor Gill. And Thursday, we didn't have anybody attend. So I did have a inquiry from the Undercurrent this morning. She was asking about the budget open houses and just about what's included in the budget, so there'll probably be something in the Undercurrent this week. I essentially received 3 email inquiries. One was fairly lengthy, and it was from actually a local resident. I'll pass that out.
Is Steve Granger or Bill?
Yes. And there's one for you. And there were 2 questions which I haven't answered, but I'll look into the issues. I'll just hand that out as well. One of, so if I can hand that out right there as well. I answered Mr. Granger's questions in an email, so the email, that copy of my response that you have is his questions and my responses. And in addition to that, we had one question, I'm not sure who it was from, but it was, could we please have information about rates of comparable communities? For context, I've called about 8 different municipalities that are on our comparator list and in the process of getting responses from them. And then there's a question which basically they're asking why why council would consider selling community land rather than retaining it and generating ongoing revenue through long-term leases. And so I would have to refer that to council. It
Absolutely.
probably wouldn't be appropriate for me to respond to that question.
Okay, Rash, what else you want us to cover here?
The only other thing was in terms of the dates for the next finance committee meetings, there's a date set for, I believe, May the 30th. I think we need
Allison
to,
had a comment on dates in her email, if you've got that handy there. Just to get
So-
that handy there, she-
I think that's what she's probably taking. She said she wouldn't have agreed to these dates, I believe, in her email if she had been part of that discussion. That May 30th, I think we need to have, well, we do need to have that on either May the 2nd or the 9th, because our financial statements have to be approved by council before the 15th. So the auditors were going to be here on March the 26th, and I need to let them know, because that's the meeting that they come to, and they would present their
Which
findings.
of those dates, one being a week later,
So May 2nd,
when would they be ready to complete their audit?
they should be ready for both of those dates. So May the 2nd works better for Allison,
Well,
I believe.
Steph did a poll, and it looked to me, I just did it today,
Okay,
and it looked like the 2nd was the preferred date. Certainly, Allison
I think
preferred
Michael and
the
I,
2nd.
Yeah.
I went after Michael and both of us were good with both dates, I think, as I recall.
And I
This is-
prefer
yeah.
the 2nd.
So the 2nd is good. What time of the day? That's a Wednesday for you, Keith.
Okay.
What
Now,
time of the day?
so-
Doesn't matter.
To be discussed, polling for May 2nd and May Sorry, I'm working on this midget.
I think, Michael, you responded.
You got the auditors usually come over
May
on the
2nd and
morning.
May 9th were open.
Ferry.
Yeah,
May 2nd and May 9th. What's this, Wednesday, May 30th?
That's dangerous cargo
Cross
day.
that out then.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wednesday?
Wednesday's dangerous cargo, so the ferry that'd have to come on would be the 8 something or other,
Yeah.
or the 10
That'd be
something or
the
other.
8:30 or the 10.
And then go back in the 4, what do they do all day?
Yeah.
So if they come on the 8 something, you're coming over too? Is
Oh.
9 o'clock too early to get the ferry, get here and get organized, or?
I would suggest for the auditors, maybe we have them come over on the 10 o'clock. I'll be here first thing, and that way they've got plenty of time to get there.
Be on the ferry at 10 or have the meeting at 10?
No, them be on the 10 o'clock ferry.
Okay, so that means we probably got a 10:30 meeting?
This is Wednesday the 9th.
Yes.
No, the
No, the
second.
May
2nd, sorry.
2nd.
Thank you.
Is that ferry exactly 10 o'clock?
It might be 10 minutes after 10.
10:15, I think, or
10:15
something.
or
something.
Yeah, so.
Unless it changes at the end of March, I don't know.
10:45.
Do you want me to quickly look up the
Yeah, I gotta-
schedule? Because
I'm
I
trying to get
know
my phone lit up here so I can look it up here.
I know that it changes the end of this month. Snug Cove, where are you? There you are, Snug Cove, and we're talking May. Well, that's a short little window, April 1st to May 16th. Leave Horseshoe Bay 8 AM or 10:15.
There
Okay,
you go,
Okay.
somebody said
10:45?
10:45,
For the meeting?
10:45,
Sure.
10:45,
Yeah.
10:45?
Yeah,
10:45.
10:45.
Are you gonna be, is it possible for you to send out an email? I don't have anything to write with, and I can't write anyhow.
For the meeting
To
date, you mean?
confirm the May 2nd and the time?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. I can't wait.
So Wednesday is kind of what really works for you best, right? Is it or something?
When, I don't go to town Wednesdays.
Okay.
I go to town Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays. Except for the
Okay.
last 2 weeks, no.
Tell you
Wednesday.
the comment I can't resist saying because I'm a fanatic over the Capitol, but I looked at the 5-year forecast and I noticed that our debt service is going up by a factor of 5 times. It's going from like 65,000 to 320,000,
Good.
which
Oh.
seems to be a little, so we're spending all this capital, but you gotta service the debt as happens in most households, so.
That's a lot of debt service.
Principal right over here.
Yeah, the interest on the principal.
Oh, yeah, I
That's my
didn't
math.
change the outer years. I'm going to correct them to reflect,
Gets lower?
pardon, no, it's not gonna get lower, it's gonna actually, she's probably taken into consideration. Yeah, I'm not sure, I've just left the numbers here the way they were previously.
Yeah,
I know for what I'm gonna be doing to these numbers, I'm going to be taking into consideration the, conversion of
oh,
the,
yeah,
$2 million
term it
to
out,
long-term debt.
yeah.
And that is gonna make the debt servicing costs go up because we're gonna have to be paying
Interest
back
rates is gonna go up and you're gonna have a P going back too.
So,
Wow, that could be.
so in our outer years, it's gonna have a significant impact on residents because you're gonna see the $66, the $66 for fire, which will kick in 2019.
Mhm.
And then you will also probably have another $45 if we have to convert the $2 million debt into long-term
I would say
debt.
at least that, because you get the PI on $2 million is gonna be at least close to a 5% rate, it could be close to 100 Gs. So this thing could go from 65 grand to 420.
So the impact of those two items will be reflected in the 5-year financial
So
plan.
it's probably gonna go up
next
about
week.
6 times, I bet you.
Well,
Some
what they-
trivia for the group.
Yeah, what we're going to have to be aware of is, don't forget that at the election time, the municipal, or the community centre will go up for the,
And that's not impacted, that's right.
no. So there's lots of moving parts here that people are going to need to understand. It's one thing to ask people for a little bit of money, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we're actually going to be doing something on the other side as well, which might hurt. Okay, well that's
So moved?
So moved, question adjourned?
done.
Raj, by the way, I just give you a compliment, the visuals that you're presenting here to the public, I think are really good. I mean, for better or worse, I think that with all the capital we're spending, it's scary, I know, for some politicians, but the more the public understands
Yeah.
where the money is going, I think they got a right to know, and B, they should know, and as the councilor's already pointed out, the